Chris Sewall here, baseball card collector, investor, dealer, in that order. Welcome everyone. Today we're going to look at error cards in the hobby. First go through kind of, what to know about them today from a collector standpoint, then talk about their history a little bit, and finish by running through some of the most famous and valuable error cards of all time. I get many emails asking me if an error card is valuable, and a lot of eBay sellers, take advantage of newer collectors by claiming a card is worth a lot more than it really is because it's an error. But for an error to be worth something today, there's basically three things that must be true about it. And this is not a perfect list, but this is basically always the case. Number one, it needs to have been corrected. If an error was not corrected, then the error adds no value. A good example of this is the 1990 Fleer Jose Uribe card, which is just a common. It's worth under $1. It is an error because his birth date is wrong, and a lot of sellers try to take advantage of this by claiming it's some super valuable error, but the card was never corrected by Fleer, so there's no added value. It's not rare in any way, and it is still worth under $1. Number two is the error variation has to be rare. On this 1990 score, Ryne Sandberg, for example, you can see the error version on the left, listing him as a third baseman. The corrected version is on the right, with no position given. The corrected version is worth less than $1, and the error is slightly rare, but not really by a significant amount, so despite being an error, it has little to no added value since it's not a rare card, and it's also worth less than $1. And number three, which is most importantly of all, it has to be a card that there is demand for. The demand can be because it's a key rookie of a notable player or it's in an important set, but if there's not collectors who want it for some reason, it will have no added value, even if it's rare. Errors of common players will rarely see much value unless there is something significant about it. But okay, so with that, let's go through just a quick history of errors. There are error cards throughout the vintage years, some of which hold a lot of value because of the desire by collectors to put master sets together. That's a master set's a complete set that also includes all the errors and the variations, but they really got popular in the late 80s as there was an error card boom during the junk wax era. Collectors really started desiring tough-to-get error cards. They almost became, the rare insert chase card before rare insert chase cards existed. For some reason, and which I don't really have a good explanation for, the interest in error cards is almost exclusive to baseball. There's a few notable ones in the other sports, but it's really the vast majority of notable errors through the years are in baseball. The other sports have very, very few errors of note. Before then, generally card companies would not correct errors unless it was a notable mistake, but in the late 80s, errors and their corrected versions started popping up everywhere. And in the 80s, for a while, certain errors were worth as much as any cards from the entire decade. While there's no definitive proof of this, it's widely considered to be the case that card companies started producing and correcting errors on purpose to add intrigue to their sets. The 1989 Upper Deck set is loaded with errors that were corrected. Some minor ones, such as the position being upside down on the Gary Sheffield rookie. Others more notable, such as the Dale Murphy reverse negative. The errors from the 89 Upper Deck set still hold decent value today because the set is so historically significant. It all sort of came to a boil in, I would say, 1990 when the errors just went off the rails, particularly Donruss, but also Fleer and Score and a couple other companies as well just had so many errors in their sets that it started to lose its intrigue. Shortly after that, inserts and parallels started popping up in sets, and errors quickly lost interest amongst collectors. After the early 1990s, there are really few, very, very few errors that hold any notable value, and they essentially never command a major premium. Today, if a card has an error, it's usually not even corrected and comes with no added value. But all right, with all that being said, I've compiled a list of some of the most famous and more valuable errors of all time, and I've factored in value, hobby significance, historical context, that sort of thing to choose these here. And we'll run through them from oldest to most recent. Let me know if you think there are any major ones I left off. I'm not including any variations, which are prevalent in the vintage years. Cards like the 1958 Topps Hank Aaron and the 1969 Topps Mickey Mantle, where there's just a variation of the card, variation in the color scheme or something like that. But okay, we'll start off with the most valuable error card of all time. It's a T206 Sherry Maggi. Maggi was a star player, but not a Hall of Famer. But this error from the very popular T206 set, which also has the Wagner, the seven-figure Wagner card, is very, very rare. And this is actually the third most valuable card in the set. It's more valuable than the Cobbs or a bunch of those other cards. The only thing about the error is that his name is misspelled. His name is Maggi with two E's on the right. That's the correct on the right. The one on the left, IE, is in fact the error. To give you a sense for how big a difference in value there are, a PSA 4.5 of the corrected version sold a couple of years ago for $271. A PSA 4.5 of the error sold last year for six figures, $115,200. Jumping ahead 40 or so years, we come to another monster vintage set from 1952 tops. Like the T206 we just saw that had the famous Wagner, the 52 tops obviously has the famous Mickey Mantle, and it's a very, very popular set for vintage collectors to try to put together, and they often want the master set, and the set comes with different back variations and an error, actually two errors where the cards were switched. Cards number 48 and 49, Joe Page and Johnny Sane, the bio on the back were switched. So you can see this is the Joe Page, and they even got his name right on the back, but the write-up, when they're talking about Johnny Sane in the write-up, and on Johnny Sane's card they're talking about Joe Page's write-up. So that was an error. I believe those are the only two errors to be corrected from the 1952 top set. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I believe so. They're definitely two of the more famous errors from the set, and they don't command huge value. They're not old, super rare. I think the errors are kind of like twice as rare as the corrected versions, and maybe about 3 times as valuable. Next up is sort of a random card from a random set. 1958 tops, Pancho Herrera. He's just a common, but like I said, vintage set builders love putting together master sets. This one makes this master set tough to put together. The card on the right is the error. You can see it's missing the A in his name at the top right, and part of the R is obscured as well, but very, very difficult error variation to find. The common corrected version in a PSA 8 recently sold for $25. The error in a PSA 8 last sold for $13,200, and that was 5 years ago. That was the last sale of a high-grade copy of an error. No idea what one would go for today, but that gives you a sense for how tough a card it is to find. All right, we're going to jump ahead now to the 1980s, and here's a 1982 Fleer John Littlefield error, and it's a reverse negative. He's a right-handed pitcher, so the corrected version is on the right. The picture is inverted on the error on the left, where he is a left-handed pitcher in that photo. When I first got into the hobby, I want to say my first Beckett was like early 1989, let's say. I remember this specifically. There were 3 cards from the 1980s listed in Beckett for $100 or more. They were the 86 Donruss Jose Canseco, the 84 Donruss Don Mattingly, and the 82 Fleer John Littlefield error. That's right. This common card was one of the 3 most valuable cards from the 1980s at the time, and would still be it's still pretty valuable today. It's not as prestigious as it was back then, but the corrected version in a PSA 9 is like a $10 card or so. The error version in a PSA 9, the last sale was for $775. In 1987, Donruss had a sort of like a side opening day set, which you didn't get in packs. You could only buy it by the set, and it featured a bunch of sort of upcoming rookies. One of them being Barry Bonds, although they botched the Barry Bonds card at first. They put Johnny Ray on the card. The card on the right is Johnny Ray. That's the error. They did correct it pretty early and put actually Barry Bonds on the card on the left, which is the corrected version. So the error is very rare. Not a lot of copies of the error got out there. The corrected version in a PSA 9 sells for about $45 today. That sale was just a couple weeks ago. The error, as you can see in a PSA 9, goes for 4 figures. $2,300 was the last sale. That was this past December. Already mentioned the all-important 1989 Upper Deck set. This card here was another card from the 80s that actually got up over $100 in Beckett all the way back then. This was the Dale Murphy error, the reverse negative. He's a right-handed batter, so the one on the right is the correct. The one on the left is incorrect, and you can see the logo on his shirt and hat are inverted, so that's more evidence that it's an inverted photo. $35 will get you a PSA 10 copy of the corrected version. $625 is what you'll need to buy a PSA 10 copy of the error. This one's maybe not overly significant, but I always found this one very interesting. 1989 Fleer Randy Johnson rookie. It's a Hall of Fame rookie card. The one on the left is the error, and it's really not so much an error, just as a goof up by the photographer, I guess we'll say. Over his left shoulder, if you look closely, is an ad for Marlboro on the background there. Remember, in 1989, baseball cards were basically a kid's item, or they were mainly targeted at kids. You can't have cigarette ads on your baseball card. So they corrected the card on the right by sort of blacking it out, and a few of the errors still got out. Corrected versions in a PSA 10. Here's a recent sale for $39, and the Air way more valuable, way rare, and way more interesting. Let's say $1,300 for a PSA 10. All right, two left to show you, and I would say these two, along with the Sherry Maggi, are the three most famous Airs of all time. And another one from 1989 Fleer. Man, in 1989, Fleer was not doing well with their kids products. This is the Billy Ripken, and the one on the left is the official Air. If you look on the bat knob, there are two 4-letter F words written on the bat knob. Again, this is a product aimed at kids. The other four are corrected versions, and they from left to right, they're the black box variation, which is the most common. The one in the middle is like a scribble, where they tried to sort of scribble it out using black writing. The fourth one is they tried to scribble it out using white writing. And then the one on the far right is a white box. They basically just put a full white box over the bat knob. And there's actually other variations if you get into like the itty-nitty details, but these are the five most common variations. The black box corrected version, which is the most common of all, sells for about $50 in a PSA 10. The standard Air, which is a very, very common card, not rare at all, sells for close to $400 in a PSA 10. And the white box variation is the rarest of the major variations, with the last sale of a PSA 10 going for $2,400. And the final one to show you is the 1990 Topps Frank Thomas rookie, the No Name on Front Air, which obviously is on the right. Really, really impossible to find card. These were only issued in the very, very early 1990 Topps cases, and the Topps quickly corrected this error, so there are not many versions of this variation in existence. This is a very, very common card, or at least the one on the left is the corrected version. PSA 9's only going for about $20. Again, that's a Hall of Fame rookie card. But the Air in a PSA 9, the last sale was for $16,800, and that was a year and a half ago. I would imagine it would go for quite a bit more than that today. If we look at the PSA Pop Report, you can see just how much rarer the Air is. There's been close to 18,000 copies graded of the corrected version, and only about 250 copies graded of the Air. Incredibly, there does exist a one PSA 10 copy of the Air. That's a Pop 1. There was a sale of it. It went for $25,000 a number of years ago. Again, that would certainly fetch a whole lot more than that if put up for auction today. So that's it. Thank you everyone for watching this little rundown on Air cards and the history of them and some of the more valuable ones. Hope everyone enjoyed, and see you again real soon. Eat your vegetables. May the force be with you. Look both ways before crossing the street, and tip your servers well. Yeah, that one as well. Thanks everyone.